Hey everyone, really fascinating topic and guest today as we talk about the next frontier of leadership and what really drives high performance with a true expert in this space. Peter, how are you?
I'm really well today. Good to be here, Evan.
Well, good to see you. Good to have you here. For people who don't know your work, how would you describe what you do?
Well, I'm an executive coach working with founders and CEOs from across the country. I'm a bit of an unusual one because I'm also a psychologist and a psychoanalyst. And so I come from, a different tradition than many of the contemporary coaches come from.
Great. Well, I'm a big fan of coaching, and I've been intrigued with your work. I grew up on Tony Robbins, so I'm all about coaching and insights and learning.
Nice.
But from your point of view, you said the next frontier of leadership development is within, not without. That sounds very simple, but what do you mean exactly by that?
Well, I think as society has evolved, the demand for more subtle and more sophisticated ways of leading has grown. People are no longer going to tolerate a Bobby Knight style of coaching, throwing chairs, or even a Jack Welch, as brilliant as he was. They're not going to really tolerate a neutron Jack. They want somebody who has deeper, what I would call affective relational skills to really be compassionate, empathic, and powerful all at the same time. And that requires a deeper inventory of the self.
Wow, we're getting very deep very quickly. But talk about this shift. Is it happening now, particularly where you are in Southern California, Silicon Valley? What's happening in this regard?
Yeah, I think it is happening here. I mean, the Bay Area and Silicon Valley has always been a place at the leading edge of cultural change. And I think that there was, over the last couple of decades, coaching has become a pretty ordinary part of leadership. VCs often say to their founders, we'd like you to get some help because they know what a strong ride they're in for. And that often it's quite young people who are entering in as founders. They're entrusted with a lot of resources, and they want to make sure that personality issues or relational issues don't undermine their success. But I think more recently, there has been increasing interest in people going deeper, realizing that it's such a roller coaster to start a company. The moments of exhilaration and then pressure can alternate very quickly. And so it's not enough just to have good enough skills, emotional skills. It really requires much more resilient and in some ways, more deeply talented skills. In the same way, it's not enough just to be a good tennis player. If you want to play at Wimbledon, you really need to be excellent.
Wow, well said. And you have a unique background, I think, that informs a lot of this. Maybe talk about your background a bit, but also why is psychotherapy kind of informed executive coaching different from traditional leadership coaching that many of us have been through in the past?
Yeah. I think, as the field of coaching is open, people from virtually all different walks have come into doing the work. Many of them former people who have worked in business and who are coaching people on how to execute at these levels. But to do the kind of work that I'm most interested in, it's not enough to veneer changes over the personality. Those, all veneers tend to be thin and under stress easily crack. And so what I'm more interested in is what I would call radiant change. This is change that begins at the center of the self and emanates outward. And these kind of changes become deeply part of the self. But to do that, one really needs to have take a full inventory of how you became the person you are. What were the gifts and the deficits that your particular background granted you? And that in understanding the emotional terrain that helped create who you are, gain deeper freedom to develop a new range of skills.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I mean, many of us who came up into the world of work in the 80s and 90s, we went through business school or various standard leadership frameworks, and they were pretty revelatory. But, how does this kind of work, your kind of work, how does it reveal things that maybe these traditional frameworks often miss?
When I do an intake with a new client, I often like to say, I want to know how you got where you are today. And, people might easily think I want to understand the family they grew up in, and I certainly do. But I also like to look back 3 generations because, I work with some people who have come from very different parts of the world, and they may have come from places where there's plenty of trauma. A lot of the most successful leaders got motivation because of hardship or scarcity in the universe they grew up in. And so in some ways, there are many talents and gifts that come from that hardship, but there is a way that kind of difficulty can also leave them overly confined in some of their responses. And as they begin to solve the problem of scarcity, can they really expand into greater freedom and a range of different responses to situations, not always the most urgent, the most high pressure.
That's so interesting. You look out there and you see these similar psychological patterns among many founders and CEOs and high-profile investors and others, and they've had a lot of trauma in their life. I'm thinking even, Elon Musk, the newly minted almost trillionaire, and what he went through. Are there similar psychological patterns that you see again and again dealing with so many clients?
I mean, there are always commonalities, but in a way, I'm interested more in the differences. I think one of the differences between a therapeutic approach to coaching and other forms is that it is less generic. I don't come into a session saying, here are the 10 skills that I want to impart to you. I want to really understand who the person is and how they can leverage their own personality, their own way of being, into being their version of a leader. Not everybody should aspire to lead like Elon Musk. He does many things brilliantly, many things in ways that people find difficult, but those are suitable for his experience. Sometimes if I'm working, say, with a female CEO, the point isn't to help her learn to lead like the last generation of men. I hope to help her invent a way of leading that is fully in accord with her own power as a woman, rather than imitative of a way that a man would do it. And this diversity, this plurality of forms of leadership is what I think is really going to bring the world and the economy forward most effectively.
Amazing. So your work touches across, many topics and themes, mortality, meaning, on and on. Talk about Andre is an Idiot. For those who may not be familiar with that piece of work, what is it? Tell us about the background and why the themes there matter for leadership.
Yeah. I had a client, Andre Ricciardi, who was a very brilliant advertising guy. And at age 52, he got his first colonoscopy, and he had stage 4 colon cancer.
Wow.
Now, Andre was the son of Italian Americans from the Bronx. His mother and father had grown up poor in the Bronx, and in one generation, his dad had become the CEO of R.J. Reynolds.
Mm.
You have to imagine how brilliant and how tough that guy was to be able to pull that off. Andre had all of his father's brilliance and none of his conformity. And when he got diagnosed, his very loved mother said to him, Andre, you're a fucking idiot for waiting to age 52.
Right.
Andre, who had been looking to make a turn to creative work for a while, decided that he would make a documentary about dying from cancer called Andre is an Idiot. And what's remarkable about this film is it's a comedy about dying. Andre is relentlessly loves to make people laugh. And as his sort of greatest creative act, he made this movie. And it was at Sundance. It won, multiple awards, and it's now out on Netflix. And I got to be with him for the 3 years that he was going through cancer until he died. And this film came out.
Wow. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but it's immediately
I
on my.
It deeply. It's both very funny and very moving at the same time. He's a remarkable guy.
I can't wait to watch it tonight. Even it sounds incredible. So on that theme, I mean, do you find a connection between the sort of identity and purpose that Andre found at the end of his life with becoming more effective in a business context? Maybe not to that extreme, but on a day-to-day basis.
It's certainly not a linear process, like, if we think about this, the return on investment is immediately going to increase. But I think we want to be inspired by our leaders, and we want to feel that the people that we're most deeply involved with are not only concerned with the bottom line at all cost, but are concerned with the bottom line of the whole organization and the whole community, which is also the development and well-being of everybody who works there. When a leader is able to generate that kind of field of awareness and compassion, there's a great deal of loyalty that comes about. Those are the people you want to follow into battle.
Wonderful. Tell us about your practice and how you help leaders who feel kind of stuck internally in their organization. How does it work? How do you work? Describe the process and how to engage you.
Yeah. Well, I'm my background is a bit of an unusual one. I began in some ways doing this work as an undergraduate at Harvard while I studied philosophy. I worked with really troubled kids at that time. I like to say that now, 40 years on, I'm still working with that same generation. They're just now adults and leaders of companies. I went on to become a psychologist, and then I got another 5 years of training as a psychoanalyst. So when people contact me, we have a first session, and I sort of say, tell me about yourself. I understand what they're looking for, where they are, what's working well, what the challenges are. And then there'll typically be a moment where they'll say, well, tell me about how you work. And I explain how psychoanalysis works, and that I'm somebody, if people come in and they're ready to look deeply at the whole extent of their life, not just work, but family, parenthood, spirituality, I might be a good fit. If they really are looking for the immediate instruction book of how to run a review process, I'm probably not that person.
Great positioning there. I've worked over the course of my life with therapists and business coaches, although never the same person. So this sounds like an intriguing option. I have to keep your contact info for future reference. And thanks for sharing your unique perspective.
Sure, my pleasure.
All right. And thanks to everyone for listening, watching. Also, check out our TV show, Tech Impact, on Bloomberg and Fox Television. Thanks, Peter.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Evan. It's a pleasure. Bye.